Newcastle's General Manager Brian Langton was told yesterday afternoon that his store was one of 5 to close, the others being West Gosford, Nowra, Bathurst and Albury. Mr Langton says since the company went into provisional liquidation last month, things have gone from bad to worse.
We've had no supply, so we couldn't buy stock, and then, if you're not buying stock, your sales will go down as well.
For Mr Langton, the news has left a bitter taste after more than 2 decades of service to the company.
I've been told for the 22 years service that I've given Norman Ross, I get 2 weeks redundancy. So for 22 years, I get 2 weeks pay.
When Norman Ross closed 12 of its stores, including Maitland, last week, the managers sought legal advice and wrote this letter to the provisional liquidators and receiver manager requesting a better redundancy package for management staff. So far, they've received no reply. Tomorrow, Mr Langton, on behalf of the 5 managers recently affected, will contact both parties in a last-ditch effort to secure a redundancy package worthy of 20 to 30 years' service and loyalty to the one company. 6 of the 9 staff at Newcastle come under the Shop Assistance Award, and they'll receive a redundancy payout equivalent to time spent with the company. Management wants something similar. For Office Manager Diane Brown, who's a sole wage earner, the news is devastating.
There's not many jobs available, especially at our age. We've been working, in the 40s. When you're 40 years old, there's nothing much at that age.
The 5 stores will begin a closing down sale on Friday. The doors will close on February 14th, with staff out of work the following week.
The report plans for a more responsive and efficient ambulance service. The ambulance union says it's a bureaucratic hatchet job.
Well, the point of the report is to save the ambulance board money, and we believe that the ambulance board is looking for cheap options, and cheap options don't necessarily make for an effective ambulance service.
Under a proposed reorganisation, 9 geographic centres in the state are to be cut back to 4: Sydney, North, South and West. The plan is to reduce administrative staff and relocate people to work in an operational capacity. But according to the union, that would be an administrative nightmare. The entire North region, which includes Newcastle, the North Coast and New England, would probably be controlled from Newcastle. And the union says in the event of a tragedy such as the Kempsey bus crash, valuable time would be wasted coordinating a long-distance response.
Well, it would certainly compromise patients' welfare. That's absolutely unquestionable, and it would be, I think, to the detriment of the patient.
The union is angry it was not questioned on any of the issues in the report, but today the government gave its assurance members will be consulted before any restructuring goes ahead. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
This seems to be the end of the track for law-abiding off-roaders trying to get into Stockton Beach from a lane near Williamtown. From tomorrow, the Lavis Lane access road, which has been a freeway for four-wheel drives and dune buggies heading to the recreational vehicle areas of Stockton Beach, will be closed for mining operations. Alternative access via a formerly off-limits mines road has been suggested, but off-road clubs say the narrow one-way track, barred by a steep dune, could lead to a fatal accident.
Well, for the hardcore four-wheel driver, it is an element of danger. You get the inexperienced four-wheel driver or beach user, you're going to come over that, he's going to panic.
In January last year, an experienced off-road driver was killed when his vehicle flipped over the crest of a steep dune in the same area. The only other legal access for registered four-wheel drive vehicles is at the northern end of the beach at Barooby Point. But the Port Stephens Shire Council has already adopted traffic control measures there, using World War II tank traps in an attempt to protect other beach users from vehicles. Off-road clubs are calling on state and local government bodies to help formulate an access and management plan for the beach.
We really are on the safety issue, and sensible access and safety. People are going to get there somehow.
I would be prepared to pay a $20 or $30 a year fee myself, and I think the majority of the beach users would be prepared to pay a minimum fee like that, because providing that the councils are willing to put even half of that revenue back in to establish and maintain proper access.
The service will hold a phone-in next Monday and has encouraged people to report recent sightings. Researchers are also keen to establish goanna and red-bellied black snake numbers on the north coast. It's feared many have been poisoned while trying to eat the toads. The project comes in the wake of reported sightings as far south as Newcastle.
Heart disease can strike anyone. 13-year-old Sean Sim was born with congenital heart problems. 2 months ago, Barry Ridgway thought he was a healthy 51-year-old. He ate the right food and exercised most weekends.
I felt that no, heart problems were for other people, they weren't for me.
But Barry was a smoker, and on December 16 he had 4 bypasses to save his blocked arteries. According to the Heart Foundation, cigarettes along with high-fat diets are still killing us, but Australians are becoming too blasé.
Until the last couple of months, we hadn't realised how many people had said heart disease is fixed, and it's not. Heart disease continues to be the largest single killer of people in Australia.
The new Heart Foundation campaign is being tested in the Hunter and, if successful, will run Australia-wide. Donations can be left at Westpac and NIB branches. Only, of course, if you give a damn.
If you could have your time again, how would you approach things?
No differently, except when I was 17 and offered my first smoke, I'd have said no thanks, and I wouldn't have had this problem at all.
The fire started shortly before 1 this morning, the alarm raised by a visitor to the park.
In a matter of 5 minutes after being in bed, there was a fire burning just 20 feet away from me. So I jumped out of bed and tried to assist in putting the fire out. There wasn't much I could do.
At the time of the fire, the baby's 15-year-old mother was visiting a neighbouring van. 16-year-old Steve Pettit, a friend of the mother, was asleep in an annex adjoining the van where 10-month-old Nikki Lee lay sleeping.
I thought I was dreaming and I just ran from side to side of the caravan trying to find a way out. I couldn't find a way out.
Firefighters were on the scene within minutes. Steve escaped with minor burns. Nikki had little hope.
There was mention there was a baby in there, so I smashed the window. I tried it to a baby, it was too late.
The caravans are extremely difficult to extinguish because they consist of an aluminium shell and plywood, and they are quite readily involved in fire.
The fire investigation unit from Sydney and local police investigators were also called in. As yet, a cause hasn't been established. Detective Michael De Borno, who's heading the investigation, hopes to have a report prepared for the Maitland coroner within 3 weeks. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
This is where vehicles usually end up, dumped and burnt out in the bush. Today, police released figures from a campaign against the rising rates of insurance fraud.
At this stage, 30 vehicles had been targeted where the owners have made claims on the insurance company, and of course out of those 25 offenders have been arrested.
According to the NRMA, fraud is $1 million industry. While less than 1% of claims are illegal, the claimant is usually going for the full price of the vehicle.
Times are tough, we know that, and there'll be people out there will hear of an easy way of making $1, that this is quite easy to have your car deliberately stolen and to defraud the insurance company.
Gary Farthing says the NRMA has a system of checking any suspicious circumstances or irregularities in claims. Mr Farthing believes if the police operation is intensified, inevitably more frauds will be picked up. Police have put out a warning to offenders. All motor vehicle thefts, which number at least 2 a day in Newcastle, will be investigated for fraud, and the chance of arrest is high. The police operation has led to investigations by detectives, the Special Operations Group and the Accident Investigation Squad. Stemming from these inquiries, 39 additional charges have been laid, including attempted murder and break, enter and steal. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
The defending champions weren't even spoken about as a threat in the tournament, Wigan and Manly instead grabbing the headlines. But the Blue and Reds rode roughshod over South, the USA and Canterbury to get to the semi-finals.
I think it was a very positive weekend for the club. Obviously we would have liked to go on one better and had a chance to defend our title we won last year, but the conditions and Brisbane played well enough against us in the semi-final and that wasn't to be.
Brisbane inside the 22, a little stab kick, over for the line and yes!
It's now back to serious football and a clash against Western Suburbs tomorrow week in the Challenge Cup.
I think West are one of the favourite sides this year and we'll have to prepare ourselves very well and see how we perform against them. That'll be a good yardstick for us.
With a win over East in the first trial of the year and a $20,000 payday from the Sevens, 1992 looks good.
Injury-wise, we're looking okay. There was no major casualties from the weekend and we've got just about everyone on deck for the first time in a couple of years, so things are shaping up pretty well.
This was Newcastle Harbour this morning. Choked with debris, tons of rubbish and wood. Nearby beaches were left littered. To some it didn't matter. But others were far from impressed.
You can bust all your propellers, everything on this wood. You only got to look at it. Look at the size of all the timber. You know, it's disgrace, I reckon. Somebody should be doing something about it.
The Maritime Services Board says it will. After the flood, a clean-up operation in Carrington Basin. Further north, parts of Raymond Terrace gave way to the swollen and fast-flowing Hunter River. Other areas hit by moderate flooding included Morpeth, Brisbane Fields, Berry Park and Duckenfield. A family at Hinton was evacuated last night. This morning, cyclists shared the road. Throughout the day, emergency services kept a close eye on river levels. Late this afternoon, the situation had eased.
Yes, if there's no more rain received in the upper catchment area, we're certainly on the road to improvement, yes.
Anthony Griffiths, NBN News.
Little remains of the Gundy Bridge northeast of Scone. The steel-reinforced timber trestle structure bowed to the weight of the Pages River in full flood. Girders buckled and the main span was carried downstream by 5-metre waves and surging white water. The loss of the bridge adds more than 100 kilometres to the trip from Gundy to Scone. Further downstream, past a swathe of flattened trees, the Pages River ford between Scone and Glenbourne Dam had been undermined by the water and breached. A dozen houses were evacuated in Scone yesterday, where water levels exceeded those of the 1955 flood. Water levels have dropped dramatically in Muswellbrook today. Last night, the flood surge topped these banks and threatened homes. As the Hunter River approached a 10.3 metre peak at Muswellbrook overnight, some of those trying to warn residents of the rising water became trapped by it. 2 police constables were lucky to escape when their new V8 Commodore Highway Patrol car was washed away by a wall of water.
I looked to my left and the water was up to the window of the car. We grabbed what equipment we could out of the car to try and save it, and we got out.
There were some locals that wanted to go in and try and put a tow on it. We wouldn't let them go in because of the force of the water.
Last seen floating with blue lights flashing, the car is thought to have sunk in an 8 metre deep water hole in the river. Residents who'd been ready to evacuate were thankful that the water hadn't reached their homes.
The old chap up above must have looked after us. It never broke its banks.
14 hours behind Muswellbrook's flood tide, the river level at Singleton had exceeded the predicted 11.2 metres by mid-morning and continued to rise gradually through the afternoon. Sightseers watched a stream of debris while SES units remained on alert. More than 100 volunteers were involved in relief operations over the weekend. With the Upper Hunter flood risk easing, emergency workers took a light-hearted approach to the breaking of the drought.
We've got our quota of water, and the Scone unit sent us a fax at midnight last night, and they're going to charge us for the amount of water that came down the Hunter River. They estimate that about $2.4 million worth.
Developer Alan Ray's vision for Rafferty's Resort is of a waterfront retreat, mainly for Sydney families who want a holiday bungalow within easy travelling distance. Eventually he plans to build 200 bungalows on the Cams Wharf site, but he says potential investors were deterred by council zoning regulations, which restricted owners to a maximum stay in their units of just 90 days a year.
Therefore, at other times, they would have had to make their cottage available for holiday accommodation to other people, and it wasn't acceptable to everyone.
Last night, Council approved new zoning arrangements allowing unlimited residency, a decision which has opened the way to the first stage of construction. Alan Ray will spend $2 million over the next 12 months building 10 cottages, tennis courts, a swimming pool and a boat ramp and jetty. He says an improved outlook in the real estate market, combined with new federal government incentives for tourism projects, should give the resort a healthy boost. And the resort won't be harmed by positive signs from the neighbouring Caves Beach Resort, where construction of a golf course and marina are scheduled to begin next month.
We're delighted to hear that Caves Beach is still going. We think it'll be an asset to us here, and we welcome that start.
Tom Hilston, NBN News.
Outraged union members met last night to decide on what to do about the ambulance services report. The report calls for the introduction of super regions in the state, cutting the number of centres from 9 to 4. A new northern region would contain the Hunter, New England and the North Coast. It's claimed this would save on administration, with surplus staff transferred to work elsewhere in the service. But the union says it's a move to cut jobs, possibly removing top-level ambulance administrators and replacing them with a government bureaucrat. The meeting voted for industrial action from Friday, starting with internal paperwork bans if there are no assurances given on employment security. Another stop-work meeting is planned for next Monday. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
It will be days before the overall damages bill is known, but as the waters receded, council engineers were busy making their initial estimates on road and bridge repairs.
To now we've spent probably $11,000 on emergency management and emergency repair work. On past experience, it will probably be something of the order of $50,000 to $70,000 to repair the damage to the roads that's occurred up to now.
Hardest hit, the Scone area had 10 roads underwater, the Glenbourne Causeway washed out and the Gundy Bridge demolished. Estimates for a replacement bridge exceed $1 million. Bridge approaches at Moss Vale and Marani were also damaged. The flood torrent scoured Muswellbrook. The council there estimates repairs to roads will cost more than $63,000. Water supply and sewer services were also disrupted. With the floodwaters still swirling in the Lower Hunter, the state government has pledged disaster relief funds to local government, primary producers and personal hardship cases. The Hunter River peaked under the Belmore Bridge at Maitland this morning at 9.9 metres. For the rest of the day, SES units using boats have been checking on levee banks and property holders in the area. Floodwaters have topped levees beneath Maitland, forming an inland sea around the Phoenix Park and Hinton areas. Many have become used to life on the floodplains.
I was born here 80 years ago this year. When you're on a good thing, stick to it.
For others, the first decent crops ripe for harvest after 2 lean drought years have been lost.
An enormous loss to the farmers here. That's, as you can see, it's almost all inundated. They'll save very little, I guess. It's the whole year's work gone, and there's so little you can do to help them. It's just a matter of watching disaster happen.
Floodboat patrols battled currents in search of breaches in the levee. A visit to Morpeth brought flood relief of a different kind.
I did flush.
As reluctant passengers clung grimly to debris for a ride downstream, Newcastle's fishing fleet remained marooned on a sea of flotsam.
It's going to cost at least 3-4 days until the debris does disperse and the tide takes it away. That way then the fish trawlers here will be able to go to sea.
Three FM radio frequencies have been allocated to the Newcastle area by the Federal Department of Transport and Communication. X13 and 2KO expressed interest and late last week were given the green light. Mr Dawkins believes for stations with an all-music format, FM is better suited.
The quality that comes out of the FM speaker, I mean, you don't have the static that you are normally associated with AM band, not a lot of electrical interference, so you're getting the good quality music coming out crystal clear.
The changeover requires both stations paying a fee of up to $500,000 to the Australian Broadcasting Tribunal. AM broadcasting equipment must be converted and a new transmitter site found. 2KO and X13 still have some paperwork to finalise with the Federal Department of Transport and Communication, but all going well, both hope to be transmitting on an FM frequency by the end of the year. The Gosford area also gets a new FM station. As of Saturday, 2GO changes to the FM band. Mr Dawkins says the future for FM stations is all music, with AM broadcasters becoming more specialised.
AM stations are going to have to develop their own individual formats in terms of talk formats or all sport formats, all news formats.
Newcastle's other commercial AM station, 2HD, has not decided to convert as yet. When contacted today, management wasn't available to comment on the station's future intentions. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
Sophie was feted with a guard of honour by many of her friends as she entered the club. She was also greeted with congratulations and showered with kisses and gifts. A resident of the Taree area all her life, Sophie has 6 children, 16 grandchildren and 40 great-grandchildren, with another on the way. The secret to Sophie's long and healthy life is clean living. She was a dressmaker before she married. Although her bowling days are now limited, she commemorated her day with a couple of bowls, much to the delight of her friends. The rest of the birthday celebrations included photographs, speeches and a luncheon, not to mention the special bowls that were shaped in the figure of 100. Sophie was overcome with all the fuss and she spoke fondly about her bowling friends.
Now I come down when there's anything special on. It's nice for them to ask me.
Port Macquarie residents fear that if their new hospital is built privately and operated by Healthcare Australia for the government, medical care could suffer. Last weekend, locals protested against the proposal with a march through the town, and in the latest move, they picketed Ms Machen's Port Macquarie electoral office and presented a petition to her staff calling for her resignation. Leading the protest is John Murphy.
Well, I'm sure that if Wendy hands in a resignation, that would mean not a by-election, that would mean a new election. And if Nick Ryan is willing to take a new election and get a mandate from the people on this privatisation of our hospital systems, so be it. Let the people speak.
Ms Machen said from her Sydney office this afternoon that she has no intention of stepping down. She said Port Macquarie should have its new hospital within 2 years, much quicker than waiting for the government to build it.
A black and white photo capturing forever J. Richardson and Co. in its glory days. The David Jones of the New England, they used to call it. Now the business's days are numbered. At the end of this month, Richardson's will close after almost 150 years.
A sad day for Armidale Retailing to lose a company that's been in existence for so long.
It's been a long fight. The business went into receivership almost 2 years ago. An extensive marketing campaign failed to find a buyer. The 17 staff have been assured of a full payout. The building will be auctioned in March. Anthony Griffiths, NBN News.
After the last national wage rise, some Australians found their pay packets had increased by 2.5%. Last night, Newcastle City Council's senior officers' pay rose by almost 4 times that much. Council aldermen voted behind closed doors to increase the directors' and deputy directors' salaries. The departmental heads of community services, administrative services and planning see their pay jump by about 9.2% to $72,000. The Director of Health and Building Services has an even bigger percentage increase of 9.5% to bring the salary in line with the others. Deputy Directors' pay increases range from 5.8% to 7.5%.
We are losing our officers to mostly to the government positions, and we have to pay a wage that is relevant to the job they are doing and at what the market demands.
But a former Labor Lord Mayor, Charlie Jones, who protested against the increases from the public gallery before the in-camera session, says the jump is unjustified. Mr Jones says he also resents ratepayers being locked out of the discussion, accusing the aldermen of forming a secret society.
I think it stinks. I think it is absolutely ridiculous that the council, literally at the drop of a hat, goes into camera.
People know and knew as soon as we walked out what our decision was and what the wages are, and will know the wage of every one of those officers there.
The Bureau of Meteorology says the Namoi River will rise slowly overnight, but the peak tomorrow morning is not expected to cause any real problems. Currently, the water level is slightly higher than the August 1990 flood, but well below the 7.5 metre peak of the January 84 flood. The town has escaped untouched, protected by levee banks, with the main problem, the number of roads cut.
Our roads are cut. We can get in and out of Narrabri via Yarry Lake. We have about 12 to 14 inches of water over the road at the Lagoon Bridge, but that's only more or less cut to small vehicle. It's still open to commercial type vehicles.
But the SES hasn't left anything to chance and has a number of precautionary measures up its sleeve should the situation worsen.
We have got about 200 metres of sand in town, cubic metres of sand in town, just in case we wanted sandbagging at any time. We've got around about 20,000 sandbags. We have a sandbagging machine at Gunnedah if we need it at any time. We also have flood pumps.
This week's flooding has prompted the SES to call for all landholders to ensure they have the name of their property painted on the roof of a shearing shed or other building to enable easy aerial identification.
There would only be about 5% of the houses in the rural areas outside our levee that would have names on them, and it is very difficult that if somebody gets sick or something like need food drops and we have to bring aircraft in, it's very hard to distinguish whose property from the air because people have not got their names on their roof.
The clean-up after the weekend storms and subsequent flooding is all but complete. The Hunter Ports Authority is now using a specialised harbour clearing vessel on loan from Sydney to remove the last of the debris. The Gadara is a Japanese-designed boat which scoops floating rubbish into holding bins for removal by land transport. It's equipped with a mouthful of circular saws which cut rubbish into manageable portions. Fortunately, this stranded blue-tongue lizard was spared a horrible fate by watchful crew members. Already most of the heavy clean-up is out of the way, according to Harbour Master Captain Neil Morrison.
We've had freedom for navigation for the last couple of days, Tom. Most of the large logs and trees have been removed. However, there are pockets of flotsam around the place.
The harbour debris has also interfered with fishing operations, but the floodwaters have ultimately provided a bonus for fishermen now able to venture offshore.
In the last 2 days they've been getting out and getting good catches, especially of bream, jewfish, things like that. They've been washed out. A lot of the prawns have been washed out and we expect to get a good catches from stock and bite prawns and king prawns over the next week, as well as good catches around the beaches.
Tom Hilston, NBN News.
One thing's for certain in these days of rapid climatic change, a bit of wind and sun on a once sodden soil quickly becomes a den of dust, as 4 Formula 500cc drivers found out as they prepare for the New South Wales Championship. Chris Alcorn, Ken Threadgate, Brad Cameron and Tony Pryor stole a march on their rivals with a sneak preview of the track, one that in essence will be vastly different tomorrow night. Roy Urpeth is the defending champion and he will be hard-pressed by the 4 above plus Victorian Darren Tierney, South Australian Ken Bowie and Singleton's Thorley brothers. Brad Cameron has driven well all season but is not overconfident.
It's going to be tough. I'm not overconfident because there's a lot of hard boys out there and they charge and it's going to be the bloke that makes the minimum mistakes, I think.
Also on the program is the State Street Stock Sedan Championship with Liz Moore's Mike Santini keen to repeat last year's performance. But locals Dave Roberts, Daryl Kime, Wayne Phillips and a host of others will be out to regain the crown for Newcastle.